hands in. No, we're not doing hands in.
Woo! Alright. You are listening to The Pod, episode 13. Today we're talking alienation, so let's get started. Hey Dude Bro Teens, Jess Squared and Michelle here. Welcome to The Pod. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Pod is produced every year 11 English final for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at my Google Doc homepage. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Tumblr, Reddit, LinkedIn, MySpace, Vine, and Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now, let's get into the show. So, welcome back to The Pod, everyone. Today, from one of our biggest, most loyal subscribers, Mrs. Zatora, we received a question. And that question is, what are some examples of alienation in literature based on the books we read this year in class? Big question. Big theme, alienation. What is alienation, Michelle?
So, alienation is isolation from a group or activity that which the person should be involved in.
Yes, that is the definition of alienation, according to dictionary.com. So alienation is really big in society.
If you do not conform, then you get alienated by society because actually I read an article on this. There was an example. It was miners in, so like black and white miners, they coexisted fine until they got to like not the underground, the above ground. And what? Whoa, wait!
Upper ground.
Society.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So in society there was segregation because that's just like, this was like way back. Like this article was like probably around like the 1960s, 50s. So like in like regular society, like it was looked down upon to like mingle. Mingle together because that's just like the social normatives at the time. Like now that's like completely different, but like different time. Social normatives in like Europe are going to be different from the United States, and like Texas is going to be different from New Jersey. Like,
and if you don't conform to social standards, you get alienated and isolated in society, and you're really sad. Well, speaking of teenagers in the 60s, I will play that song about some cauliflower named Holden Caulfield. Catcher in the Rye, more like catcher, hey, bye. Holden Caulfield is probably the prime example of teen alienation isolation based on yourself. So Holden alienated himself from the whole entire world from the first line of the book. He felt rejected and denied from society for wanting to be different, and decided to push everyone away from himself so he could just focus on his self-pity, calling everyone phonies. Throughout the story, you see him trying to break free without trying to interact in New York City and society, and whenever he gets like really close to that point where he's going to be social and break his alienation, he pulls himself back, and he forces himself to like almost punish himself for alienating himself. And the best symbolism of this is his red hunting cap in the book. Whenever Holden like feels that he's getting too close into society, he wears the red hunting cap to stick out, so people will quote unquote ignore him, and he'll re-alienate himself. Everyone.
That's not alienation. I'm pretty sure
that's not alienation.
It's safety.
It's safety. It's protection. The hat was safety and protection of himself, so that others would ignore him. And then another thing.
Are we cutting that out?
No. Stop asking for cutting things out. We're going to keep everything in. It's going to be a 35-minute podcast episode. It's going to be great. The isolation that he puts himself through just makes him like depressed. And like that is like the main symptom that happens of alienation. Like people become more depressed, and their self-image of themselves goes down, and they feel they have no one to talk to, which continues the vicious cycle of alienation until this person is so depressed and sad that they like want to die. And that's kind of where Holden is at the end of the book, because he has no one to talk to about it.
He was like pushed to the hacking edge.
You want to know who else was pushed to the edge?
Yes, I'd love to.
Nick Carraway, and I think Michelle can explain that for us.
So Nick Carraway, originally from Minnesota, moves to New York and meets his very extravagant neighbor, Jay Gatsby.
They're married, they're gay.
Oh my god.
Gatsby? What?
So from observing his cousin Daisy, he realizes that they're very different from the way he is, and he feels alienated. He sees the town from an outsider's view because he isn't from there. He sees the characters for who they are and realizes that the people he meets are all materialistic and dishonest with each other and themselves.
So basically, Nick Carraway was alienated by society.
Yeah. He feels alienated within the society that he is in. Well, that he's not in.
That he is
He's
a part of, but not involved.
That he is a part of, and he's appalled by the actions and behaviors of the people around him. He feels very out of place in New York and with the different lifestyle.
So, like, would you say this is like an economic difference, like an example of alienation?
Yes, but I would also say it would be more of a social difference, since their social classes were different.
I was reading an article, and it was the source was Karl Marx.
Karl Marx.
I read the Communist Manifesto like a bedtime story. Okay, let me just get this. So like I was reading it, and he was saying because of like economic differences, he said like an example was like if you get your property or like something taken away from you of like value or like whatever. So like they become hostile towards the rest of society, something like that. It's not like he had anything taken away from him. He's just like not on the same level as like.
I mean, you.
The representation of women in this, it's disgusting.
Yeah, women representation. Women are alienated.
We have not
society.
read a book this year that has a good representation of like women in general.
Except for the Scottish tragedy. So originally the plan for this next like minute and a half was that we were going to cut this part out because it had nothing to do with what we were talking about. But going back during the editing process, I realized that we brought up a really good point about alienation of women in literature. You know, if you say it in the theater, you gotta spin 3 times and like spit and curse.
I really don't remember that ever happening. Are you in this school? We never read that.
Yeah, wait, we never read
that.
I don't know what book you're talking about.
What was the first thing we read this year?
Macbeth.
No.
Like
It doesn't matter.
This is like completely off topic. I don't know what we're talking
Talk
about.
to women. So.
I want to talk about women. I love women.
But it doesn't matter. But you wanna know what's worse?
No,
Mentally ill men.
Oh, yeah.
Next section, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
So.
Wait, that was a terrible transition.
Doesn't matter. I'm gonna use the old transition. We're gonna cut. It's gonna be great. I'll play some Seinfeld music. It'll be great. It'll be awesome.
I was winking at the camera, and there's a window, and everyone sees me winking at them. So, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is an example of political, social alienation, not so much as economic for us, but
It's
so
gross.
it's very gross. So, the mental ward that all these patients reside in. So, they're kind of like ignorant to the fact that these patients are like actual people, and they like deserve better treatment. They go through with like terrible like practices to heal patients when it's more like it's closer to punishment or just experimentation than actual help for the patients. We're not even left. One left because he was so docile due to I think electroshock therapy, electroshock therapy, that he was able to re-enter society, but he was not like the person he was when he entered. It's irreversible. Like they can't get better. That's because of the inhumane practices they do, and they kind of like not ignore, but
Ignore.
yeah, they ignore all like all morals just to like go through with this. Wow.
I think, if anything, alienation in that book is not even like the whole like bigger picture. It's as simple as
Within the ward.
Within the ward, every single patient is alienated from each other.
From each other. So in society, because like social norms, like they can't, because of their like mental illness, like these are more like severe, like not just like these are like severe mental illnesses, like they can't function on their own. So like picking up social cues is like very difficult for them. So they can't really like assimilate with like the culture or just like society. So
even in the culture
in the ward, they can't relate
ward.
to each other. So they're like alienated on their own. And like even in the ward, like those workers, the combine, they
the boys.
the boys. What I said is for.
The boys!
So, even like the workers, they're very like condescending towards them. They don't treat them right, and they're aware of this. They might not be able to like act on it correctly, but like they're aware and they feel like the effects of it. So like Nurse Ratched, like they're even in their own like environment, like they're not being treated right. They're alienated. Like even in like so like with those group therapy sessions, they Nurse Ratched's like objective is to get them to turn against each other by exposing stuff they probably wouldn't want to. Like so like by doing that, it's supposed to be helping them, but in reality, it's just like creating a pecking party.
I think we've hit every book pretty well. Pretty well.
I want to talk about McMurphy.
So, Michelle, do you want to introduce the sponsors for us today?
So, today's podcast is sponsored by
Fidget spinners.
What's another sponsor today, Jess?
Well, if you really wanted to know, you know that commercial, and it's like, it's a pillow.
It's a pet.
It's a pillow pet.
Good morning. Out here. Everyone wave to the camera and say goodbye. Bye. Enjoy your memes. Now I know you're all sick of hearing my voice. Trust me, I've been editing this for 7 hours. I'm tired of my voice too. But as we were wrapping up everything, Michelle and I realized that we still had a little bit more to say about alienation in society and why it's so important to learn about to this day and why it's something we need to learn about the rest of our lives. So here's Michelle giving a nice little wrap up about that.
Alienation is important to read about because alienation in literature reflects alienation in society, and it's important to read about it from different people's perspectives to understand how we all feel about each other and feeling alienated.
Alright everyone, our theme music is by Wolfpack, the podcast edited by Jess Marr, hosted by Jess Marr, Jessica Findlay, and Michelle Cheng. If you have any future questions, please feel free to email Ms. Datora, our period 3 English teacher, because we can't answer them probably, and as we say in our English class, thank God we're done.